Hi everyone, it's Lisa. Thank you so much for joining me today. In today's video, I will be making 20 cards with Spellbinders All Aboard Christmas Kit. This is a limited edition Christmas kit, which I previously did an unboxing for, which I will link that video down below if you want to see everything that's included in the kit. And I will say that this kit is jam-packed with so many fun goodies to make your Christmas or winter themed cards. So here is just a quick look at what is included in the kit. So you get your 6x6 paper pad. There are so many ephemera pieces, tags, chipboard pieces, there's stickers, there's floral die cut pieces, and a stamp set, cardstock, there's even a die to make a cute little train doing some paper piecing, which you're going to see that here in my first card. So for my first card, I'm making a slimline card, and I cut down a piece of blue cardstock to 8 1/4 by 3 1/4, and I used the Spellbinders Big Dot Slimline embossing folder to create this fun pattern on my cardstock. Next, I'm using the train die. I've already die cut the train out of various color cardstock pieces, and I'm just doing some paper piecing. So I will say that if you love to paper piece, this train die is for you because there is a lot of paper piecing involved. It's not much, but there are some little pieces, such as you see me putting on this train. There's some little strips that are used for the accent pieces on the train. You can use them in any color you want. And there's also the wheels, so I've already die cut all of the wheels. And then there are the connector pieces to connect those wheels. So a lot of little pieces. So if you like die cutting, you're going to have a lot of fun with this train die. So I'm going ahead and using my glue, and this is the Tombow liquid glue, which I love because it dries clear and it doesn't leave any residue on the cardstock. So that's why I chose to use it, because there are these very small pieces to add to the train. Now you can make this train as long as you want to just by die cutting and putting together as many cars as you want to. I chose to include only 2 cars. So as I'm attaching the wheels to the 2 cars on this train, I'm actually attaching them underneath the train car, whereas for the front of the train, those wheels are on top of that piece. Once I have the actual train put together, I'm going to start with the tree. This tree is actually going to go inside one of the train cars, and it has several little pieces. So I die cut the tree out of one of the green pieces of cardstock in the kit, and then it has these little snow borders that I die cut. There are 3 of them. Each one matches up to the individual pieces of the tree. Once the snow is added, I will put the tree together just by adding a little dot of glue at the top of each one of those sections of the tree until I have the 3 layers of the tree. There's also this little tree bark die. Mine just happened to cut in white because that's the color cardstock I used for the snow on the tree. I'm not going to use it, so I'm just going to set it aside. If you wanted to use it, you can always die cut it in a different color. So now I'm going to put some of these presents together. I actually die cut the presents, which are the rectangle shapes, out of some of this pattern paper from the paper pad, but because that paper is so thin, I also used the same dies and die cut some thicker white cardstock just to back them up so that they have more stability. So now I'm just putting each one of those pieces of pattern paper on the matching die cut shape that I cut out of the white cardstock. I die cut the ribbon out of some gold mirror cardstock, and I also made sure I had double-sided adhesive on the back of that cardstock before I ran it through the die cutting machine, just because I didn't want to have to try to put liquid glue on the back of those thin die cut pieces. So you can see how I'm adding those pieces of ribbon to the presents. There is a long strand of ribbon which I added to that tall present, and then there are the bows. So I just had to die cut multiple bows and multiple of the long strands just to make sure that I had enough for all of these little presents that I'm going to include in my train. I'm also including 1 ornament and just adding the top to the ornament, also cut out of the gold cardstock. And now I'm just adding them all to the train car. So I'm just putting some liquid glue on the bottom front of each one of those images and sticking it to the back side of the train car. So if you wanted to have more ornaments than presents, you can do that. If you wanted to have more Christmas trees, you can totally do that as well. It's really up to you what you want to include in this cute little train. And that Christmas tree would also look great if you wanted to have a field of Christmas trees, maybe in the background of your train scene. You can do that too. So now that my train is put together, I'm going to finish up this card. I have a piece of white cardstock I cut down to 8 1/4 by 3/4 and put it there at the bottom of that panel. I also used some Nuvo glitter drops in the white blizzard color, and I just used my finger to rub some of that glitter on the circles on that background. If you wanted to use a Q-tip or something else to do that, you can. I just wanted it to have a little bit of sparkle on there. And I actually add that glitter to each one of the circles on that panel so that all of them have glitter. So here I'm just adding the train pieces, making sure that the train is actually sitting on the edge of the white border, because I don't want it to be positioned inside that white border, otherwise it might look like it's positioned inside the snow. I'm also adding some connector pieces in green to connect each one of the train cars. And then for the sentiment, I just used one of the banners that says special delivery, and then I'm going to add that to the top of a red piece of cardstock that measures 8 3/8 by 3 3/8. And then I will add that to a slimline white card base that measures 8 1/2 by 3 1/2. And to get your slimline card base, just cut your paper down to 8 1/2 by 7 and score it at 3 1/2 inches on the 7-inch side. And I do want to mention that all card measurements will be listed in my blog at lisamearsdesigns.com. And there will be a link in the description box below. For this next card, I cut down that red star paper to 4 5/8 by 3 3/8, and then I just cut with my scissors a snowy hill that I was including at the bottom of that star paper. So I attach it, and then I just snip off the excess white cardstock, and then I'm just going to create a little bit of a scene by using some of the ephemera pieces. I have this Christmas tree and a deer. I'm just going to trim off the bottom of that tree so that it fits in that snowy hill and does not go past the red piece of paper. And I go ahead and add the tree inside the snow, and then the deer will be placed on top of that. You can see that I'm bringing in an ephemera piece for the sentiment, and it says the most wonderful time of the year. I love how all of these colors match. So I'm going to add the sentiment, and then I'm going to add the deer. The sentiment goes first because that deer, the antlers are going to just go over top of that sentiment just a little bit. And you can see there in the background, I'm actually going to be using a die. It's a Spellbinders die that is called the Elegant Twist Rectangle dies. And I die cut the actual shape in the navy paper, which you see here. And then there is a solid piece or a solid die in that set, which I die cut the gold mirror cardstock that you see laying on the table. And if you notice that the gold mirror cardstock has a hole cut out of the center, just because I was trying to save some of my mirror cardstock. So that's why I did that, because this navy piece is going to go right over top of the gold so that the gold actually shows through on all of those pieces that are die cut out of that navy piece, and it looks so pretty with that gold shining through. So here I just turned the piece over, and I'm just filling in that hole with just some scrap paper, just so that when I add this to a card base, everything lays flat and there's not a deep hole in the middle when you press it down. Next, I'm going to add the red cardstock piece that I put all that ephemera on. It will go nicely right in the center of that blue navy paper. And then that's going to go on the top of an A2 size card base. Now this kit does include 25 white A2 size card bases and envelopes, which is so convenient. I am taking a few of the Spellbinders gold gems from my stash and adding them to the front of this card. I did make 2 of these cards because many of the ephemera pieces in this pack included 2 of each one. So there's my 2 cards, and there's a final look at the card. For my next card, I cut down that house pattern paper to 3 7/8 by 5 1/8, and then that green striped paper is also part of the pattern paper pad. I cut down to 3 7/8 by 3/4 inches. I added it there to the bottom of that piece of pattern paper, and then I also took a piece of gold glitter cardstock, and I cut it down to 4 1/8 by 5 3/8. I'm adding that to an A2 size card base. I did cut the center out just so I can save some of that cardstock, but then I added a piece of scrap white cardstock to the center to fill in the hole. I'm adding the house paper on top of the glitter. And then I'm going to add some of the house ephemera pieces to the bottom. I thought adding those green borders would look like it's maybe some grass in the background of the house with maybe either a road or a sidewalk, which is that white line. I do add the hot air balloon. I do put some foam on the back just to pop it up. Now you could also add a third house if you wanted to, but I chose to leave it at just the 2 houses so that I can use the other 2 ephemera pieces on a second card. So I did make 2 cards with this design. Moving on to my next card, I am making a mini slimline sized card. And the red cardstock is 3 3/8 by 5 7/8. The green pattern paper is 3 1/4 by 5 3/4. I'm going to be including those ornaments, 3 of the ornaments that you see there. And on the first card, I actually make 2 of these cards. And on the first card, I'm actually going to be using the gold glitter word stickers. So that's what you saw me peeling off. I have the word joy. I'm also going to include the word love. So this card is going to say love and joy. And I am going to position the word love a little bit over the ornaments just for a layered look. And then since I only have 1 set of the gold glitter stickers for these words, my second card you'll see I'm going to be using an ephemera piece. So I do back that up onto a mini slimline card base that measures 3 1/2 inches by 6 inches. To get your card base, just cut a piece of white cardstock to 6 inches by 7 inches. Score at 3 1/2 inches on the 7-inch side. So I do add some of the epoxy dots that are included in the kit. And here's the 2 cards. So you can see the second card on the right, I just included the word joy. And here's a final look at both cards. So for my next card, I have this plaid pink pattern paper, and that measures 5 1/8 by 3 7/8. I'm adding that to this blue pattern paper that's 5 1/4 by 4 1/8. And then I'm going to add that to this hot pink piece of cardstock that's 5 1/2 by 4 1/4. It's the same size as the A2 size card base. So that is going to just be attached straight to the A2 size card base. There will be no white showing because I cut that to the same size as an A2 size card base. So for this card, I am going to be bringing in some of the flowers that are in the ephemera pack. So I have a larger flower and a smaller flower, and I'm going to bring in some of the leaves and just kind of positioning them where I want them to go, just kind of tucking them in just to kind of get a feel for how I want this card to look before I actually glue everything down. And once I have everything exactly where I want it, I will then go ahead and start with the leaves, add glue to those leaves, tuck them underneath the flowers. Once the leaves are attached, then I will attach the largest flower, and then I will attach the smaller flower because that's going to layer on top of the larger flower. When I was designing this card, I initially thought about adding some foam to that smaller flower so that it's popped up a little bit, but then I decided not to. I wanted to keep it as a flat card because the sentiment was actually going to be positioned over top of those flowers. So here I'm using the gold glitter stickers, and I'm going to put the word Merry Christmas on this card. And I actually will create a second card that's very similar to this one, only it's going to have slightly different flowers and a different sentiment, because remember this gold glitter word stickers, there's only 1 pack of those. There are no duplicates, so I cannot include the word Merry Christmas twice, so instead I include the word Noel. I also want to point out for the second card, notice that more of the blue pattern paper is showing, and that's just because when I was cutting my pink cardstock, I by accident cut it a little bit smaller than the first one, which I actually like it with more of that blue showing. And if you like it that way as well, the measurements for that pink plaid paper are 4 7/8 by 3 5/8, and that is with the one with the more blue showing on the edges. And you can also see that some of the flowers are different on the second card. I also added some of the Spellbinders gold gems to the front of both cards. So here's a look at both cards. And moving on, I have some gold mirror cardstock that's cut down to 4 1/8 by 5 3/8. I did cut the hole out of the center like I did on some of the previous cards, just so that I can save some of that mirror cardstock. And I add that to an A2 size card base, and I just fill in the center with some scrap cardstock pieces. Next, I'm going to add this blue pattern paper that measures 4 by 5 1/4. And that blue pattern paper has some gold foiling on it, so it matches that gold cardstock beautifully. So I'm going to add the Poinsettia Flower. It comes in 3 pieces. So I'm just going to put some glue on the center of the largest piece and then add the medium-sized piece, and then put glue on the center of the medium-sized piece and add the smaller piece to the top. And I'm just going to tuck some of the leaves in just to kind of get a feel for how I want everything positioned before I glue everything down. And once I have all of the flower and leaves exactly where I want them, I will add glue to the leaves first. And then once I add glue to all of the leaves, I will add the Poinsettia Flower right to the top. And what's really neat about this flower, because it is layered, you can actually curl those petals and it looks like it has so much dimension. So when I add glue to the poinsettia to add it to the card, I'm only adding glue to the petals of the largest flower, because then the smallest flower and the medium-sized flower, I'll be able to curl those petals, which you'll see here in just a moment. So for the sentiment, I have these banners that I'm just layering up. I use the sentiment Warm Wishes and add that to the bottom of the card. So here you can see me just curling those petals, and I love all of the dimension that this adds. I think this card is probably one of my favorites. I do add some of these epoxy dots that are included in the kit. I add one to the center of that flower, and look at all that dimension. I did create a second one with the gold poinsettia, and then that sentiment says Merry Everything. So here are 2 cards that I made using the same design. For my next card, I have this green striped pattern paper. It's 2 3/4 by 4. I'm going to add that to a piece of the light pink cardstock that's 2 7/8 by 4 1/8. And then I have this gold foil candy design that is cut to 4 1/8 by 5 3/8, and that will be added to a piece of pink cardstock that's 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. So the smaller rectangle will go in the center of the larger rectangle. And for this card, I'm going to be using a mason jar ephemera piece that is filled with candy. So I thought that this looked perfect and went perfectly with the little candy ephemera pieces as well as that candy pattern paper. So I'm just going to add these pieces to the card front. And the sentiment I chose is Joy, Love, and Peace. And the only reason I chose that sentiment is because the colors matched perfectly with the light pink cardstock that I used on this card. I did add a bow ephemera piece to the top of the mason jar. And then I'm going to add some of these extra candy pieces to the bottom left corner of this card. And I will finish this up by adding some epoxy dots to the card and then adding this to an A2 size card base. I wanted to make 2 of this card, but I didn't have another mason jar filled with candy ephemera piece. I had the candy cane, the lollipop, and then the other piece of candy. I just didn't have that mason jar. So instead, I still made 2 more cards using this same design, only this time I'm using a different mason jar, and I am showing you the process just because I add another sheet of cardstock in within my layers. So I'm going to have all of the measurements on my blog once again, but the only thing different is I'm adding a piece of gold mirror cardstock, which is my extra layer of cardstock. And I will say that by the time I got to this card, my gold mirror cardstock is coming from my stash because the card kit only comes with 1 piece, and there's so much gold in the pattern paper and the ephemera pieces that I wanted to use more of that gold mirror cardstock. So as you can see, this card is coming together very similar to the first card that I showed you. The sentiment on the mason jar says wishing you a Merry Christmas, so I do use that as the sentiment on my card, and then I just add the flowers coming out of the mason jar. I do add that to an A2 size white card base and just finish this off with some of the epoxy dots from the kit. So here are 3 cards in a very similar design. So moving on to my next card, I have this piece of pattern paper. It's 4 1/8 by 5 3/8. I'm going to add that to a white A2 size card base. And I have this green wood grain paper that's 2 by 5 3/8, and I'm just going to add that right down the middle. I'm going to add the wreath on top of that in the middle of the A2 size card. And I have a sentiment that says holiday wishes in the same green color as that pattern paper. I add it to the wreath and I add a deer to the top of that. I do tie a bow in this twine that was included in the kit and just add it to the wreath with a glue dot. And I did make 2 of these cards. Next, I'm using the Spellbinders Hem Stitch Slimline die, which I die cut out of some gold mirror paper. I did cut the center out of it just so I could save the cardstock. And then I also die cut the top layering piece out of some white cardstock. And when you add those 2 pieces together, that beautiful gold paper just shines through those dots. I am adding a piece of scrap cardstock to the center on the back just so that I can fill in that space. And then I'm just going to add some ephemera pieces here. I add a pink Christmas tree. I will add some presents. And I'm also going to add a train, and this is a chipboard train. And from the gold glitter sticker sheet, I'm going to add the sentiment believe. And I'm also going to add a gold star to the top of the tree and 1 to the end of the word E in believe. I will add a few of the gold gems from Spellbinders. Again, that's from my stash. And then I will add this to the front of a slimline card base, and that measures 8.5 by 3.5. And using the same Spellbinders Hem Stitch Slimline die, which I've already put that piece together, I'm just adding some ephemera pieces on my next card. I thought that this would be perfect to add some more of these flowers because I still had some of these flowers left over. So I'm adding some here. I add a couple of the flowers, a larger one and a smaller one, and then I'm using the word joy as my sentiment. I finish up this card by adding some of the pink epoxy dots that are included in the kit, and that will complete this card. So for my last 2 cards, I'm using the same design. I have another piece of this gold mirror cardstock, and it is cut to 4 1/8 by 5 3/8. I did cut the center out again, as I've been doing with all of the other cards, and I'm just adding a piece of scrap cardstock right to the center so that it is an even layer. And then I have this red pattern paper that's cut to 5 1/4 by 4. I'm going to add that to the top. And I'm going to add the word Christmas to the top, and I'm going to have these 3 stockings like they're hanging from the word Christmas. So I'm just going to glue all of those down onto this card front. And then to finish up this card, I'm going to add the very small gold gems to the stockings. And basically I'm just filling in all of the gold circles on those ephemera pieces just to add some dimension to those stockings. Here are all of the cards that I created with the Spellbinders All Aboard Christmas Kit. If you're interested in purchasing this kit, there will be a link down in the description box which will take you directly to the website where you can purchase this kit. And I would love to hear in the comments below which card was your favorite. And if you like this video, as always, please click that thumbs up button and be sure to subscribe for more card making inspiration. Thanks for watching, everyone, and have a great day. Bye-bye.